Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. So today we're tackling those tiny but mighty adrenal glands using this physiology handout from Dr. Rasha Eldeeb.
Oh, good stuff.
Seriously, right? I mean, these glands affect everything, from stress to energy levels to blood sugar.
It's true. They're involved in so much.
It's kind of crazy. And get this, they have two parts, the medulla and the cortex, each with its own special job.
It's like a tag team working together to keep us running smoothly.
Totally. Now, I've always wondered about that fight or flight feeling, when something suddenly startles you.
Oh, yeah, that's your adrenal medulla kicking in.
That's what's happening.
Yep, it's like a direct line from your brain saying, hey, emergency.
Whoa, so it's super fast.
Exactly. It bypasses all the usual routes and dumps hormones straight into your bloodstream for immediate action.
Wow, that's incredible. So what kind of things trigger that besides, like, actual danger?
Well, think of it as anything your body sees as a threat, even if it's not a tiger chasing you.
Okay, so not just life or death stuff.
Right. It could be low blood sugar, extreme cold, even a really tough workout.
So basically anything that gets your heart racing.
Pretty much. It's all about prepping your body to react quickly.
That makes sense. Now, Dr. Eldeeb mentions this thing called pheochromocytoma. Sounds kind of scary.
Yeah, it's a rare tumor that can pop up in the adrenal medulla.
Oh, wow. Is it dangerous?
Well, it's usually not cancerous, but it can make your medulla go haywire.
Uh-oh. So what happens then?
Basically, it pumps out way too much adrenaline and other hormones.
Yikes. What would that feel like?
Imagine a racing heart, sky-high blood pressure, maybe even anxiety and headaches.
Sounds intense. And tricky to diagnose, I bet.
Yeah, the symptoms can come and go, so it's not always obvious.
So how do they figure it out then?
There are blood and urine tests to check hormone levels.
Makes sense. Glad there's a way to find out.
Definitely. And once they know what's going on, there are treatments that can help.
Okay, phew. So we've talked about the medulla and that immediate stress response.
Right, the first responder.
Exactly. But what about the adrenal cortex? What's its deal?
Think of the cortex as the long-term strategist.
Okay, so it's playing the long game.
Totally. It's all about balance and regulation, making sure things run smoothly over time.
So less about sudden bursts and more about keeping everything steady.
Exactly. And it does this with a whole bunch of different steroid hormones.
Oh, a whole team of hormones.
Yep. And they affect pretty much everything, from salt levels to metabolism to your immune system.
Wow, so the cortex is keeping a lot of plates spinning.
It really is. Dr. Eldeeb breaks them down into three main types: mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and even some sex hormones.
Sex hormones from the adrenal glands.
It's true. It's all about balance, remember?
Wow, I'm learning so much. So let's start with mineralocorticoids. What's their main gig?
Think of them as the sodium specialists, especially aldosterone.
Aldosterone, okay. And what does it do?
It's all about making sure your body holds on to the right amount of sodium, which affects blood pressure and fluid balance.
Oh, that's important. So it's like a tiny little regulator, keeping things in check.
Exactly. And it mainly does its work in the kidneys, which act like your body's filtering system.
I see. So aldosterone tells the kidneys what to do with sodium.
Yep. How much to hold on to and how much to flush out in your pee.
Wow, it's amazing how all these tiny processes work together. But what if things go wrong with aldosterone?
Well, if you're not making enough, you might feel tired, get dizzy, have low blood pressure, even crave salty foods.
Oh, wow. So those could be signs of something deeper.
Exactly. It's always good to pay attention to what your body's telling you.
Totally. So we've got the sodium specialist. What about those glucocorticoids? What's their superpower?
Glucocorticoids. They're often called the stress hormones, but they do so much more than that.
I've definitely heard of cortisol, but it's more than just feeling stressed, right?
Oh, yeah, way more. Think energy management, immune system, even your mood and sleep.
Whoa, they're multitaskers. So how does cortisol actually work in the body? Like, what's it doing?
Well, for starters, it can boost your blood sugar for quick energy when you need it.
Okay, so like if you're running from that tiger, cortisol is giving you a boost.
Exactly. It also helps break down fats and proteins for energy, too.
Wow, so it's like a fuel manager. But what if you're not in a life or death situation?
Even then, cortisol is busy behind the scenes.
Really? What's it doing then?
It's regulating your sleep-wake cycle, helping your immune system, even managing inflammation. It's like the ultimate multitasker, keeping so many systems in balance.
So it's essential, but too much can be a problem, right?
You got it.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into that. What throws things off balance with cortisol?
Well, chronic stress is a big one.
That makes sense. But how does that actually affect cortisol?
When you're stressed constantly, your body's like emergency mode. on and pumps out cortisol nonstop.
Oh no, so it's like your adrenal glands are stuck in overdrive.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that can lead to some not-so-fun consequences.
Like what? What happens when cortisol stays high for too long?
Well, remember how it helps with energy? Too much cortisol can lead to extra fat storage, especially around your belly.
Oh no, so that stubborn belly fat could be cortisol's fault.
It can definitely play a role. And it's not just about how you look either.
What else can happen?
Well, high cortisol can mess with your sleep, make you moody, and even weaken your immune system.
Whoa, that's a lot to deal with. So it's not just about feeling stressed, it can really impact your health.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Okay, so we need to be mindful of those cortisol levels. But before we get into that, let's circle back to those sex hormones you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. The adrenal glands do produce some, mostly androgens.
Androgens, those are male hormones, right?
Typically, yeah. But both men and women have them, just in different amounts.
So what do they do in women? I mean, we have our ovaries making estrogen.
Right, but it's all about balance. Adrenal androgens contribute to things like libido, muscle mass, and even bone density.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize. So they're not just along for the ride. They actually do stuff.
Absolutely. They're even involved in developing pubic and underarm hair during puberty.
That's fascinating. But what if the adrenal glands produce too much androgen? What happens then?
That's when we can see a condition called adrenogenital syndrome, or AGS for short.
Ah, that's what Dr. Eldeeb was talking about.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's a group of inherited disorders, basically a glitch in the adrenal glands.
A glitch? How so?
They have trouble producing cortisol properly.
Oh, no. But how does that lead to too much androgen?
It's kind of complicated, but basically the body senses low cortisol and tries to fix it.
So it's trying to help, but it backfires.
Exactly. It sends a signal to the adrenal glands to make more cortisol.
Okay, that makes sense.
But because of the glitch, the adrenal glands can't make enough cortisol no matter how hard they try.
So what happens instead?
They end up churning out these androgen precursors, which turn into, you guessed it, more androgens.
Oh, wow. So it's like a case of mistaken identity.
That's a great way to put it.
And what are the consequences of having too much androgen?
It depends on how severe the glitch is and when it's caught. In some cases, baby girls might be born with ambiguous genitalia.
Oh, wow. That must be so challenging for families.
It definitely is, but there are specialized medical teams who can help.
That's good to hear. So what if it's not diagnosed right away?
If AGS is missed, the extra androgens can cause a bunch of symptoms, especially for females.
Like what kind of symptoms?
Think excess hair growth, irregular periods, acne, even a deeper voice.
Wow, so it really impacts the body in different ways.
Yeah, but the good news is that with treatment, a lot of these symptoms can be managed.
Oh, thank goodness. What does treatment usually involve?
Usually it's hormone replacement therapy to bring things back into balance.
That makes sense. So we've covered a lot here, from the adrenaline rush of the medulla to the long-term balancing act of the cortex.
And we're just getting started.
Seriously, it's amazing how these tiny glands are so crucial for our health.
Absolutely. When they're working in harmony, we feel great, but when things are off, it can really affect us.
Totally. So what can we do to keep our adrenal glands happy and healthy?
The key is managing stress. Find what works for you. Exercise, meditation, time in nature, even just taking breaks.
Those are all great ideas. And of course, listen to your body. If you're constantly exhausted or notice anything weird, see your doctor.
Couldn't agree more. Knowing how your body works is so empowering.
It really is. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the adrenal glands. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise.
My pleasure. Always happy to geek out about the endocrine system.
You're the best. We'll definitely have to do another deep dive soon.
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. We hope you learned something new and are ready to take good care of those amazing adrenal glands. Until next time, stay curious.
Yeah, it's like your body's stuck on high alert, 24/7.
Yeah, the adrenal glands are just trying to keep up.
Right. But that takes a toll.
So what kind of toll are we talking about? What happens when those cortisol levels just won't quit?
Well, think back to how cortisol helps us use energy.
Right, it's like a fuel manager.
Exactly. But when it's constantly high, it can actually make you store more fat, especially in the belly area.
So that's why stress and belly fat are linked.
It's definitely a factor.
Ugh, it's not what I wanted to hear.
I know, right? But it gets worse.
Worse. How?
Well, besides the extra padding, high cortisol can also wreck your sleep.
Oh no, that's the last thing I need.
Right. And it can make you irritable, mess with your mood, and even weaken your immune system.
So it's not just about feeling stressed, it's like a domino effect on your whole body.
Exactly.
Right.
It all comes back to that balance we were talking about.
Okay, so managing stress is crucial. But before we get to that, I'm curious about those sex hormones from the adrenal cortex.
Oh, yeah, they're mostly androgens.
Androgens, it's usually a guy thing, right?
Yeah, but both men and women have them, just in different amounts.
So what's the deal with androgens in women? We already have estrogen from our ovaries.
It's true, but it's all about that balance again. Adrenal androgens contribute to things like libido, muscle mass, even bone density.
Wow, I had no idea. So they're actually doing important stuff.
Totally. They're even involved in developing pubic and underarm hair during puberty.
Huh, you learn something new every day. But what if the adrenal glands go overboard with the androgens?
That's when you can get a condition called adrenogenital syndrome, or AGS.
Ah, that was in Dr. Eldeeb's notes. What's the deal with AGS?
It's a group of inherited disorders that affect how the adrenal glands make hormones.
Okay, so it's like a genetic glitch.
Pretty much. They have trouble producing cortisol the right way.
So it's like a factory error?
Kind of. The body senses low cortisol and tries to fix it like it's supposed to.
That makes sense. It's trying to help.
Right. But because of the glitch, the adrenal glands can't make enough cortisol no matter what.
Oh, no. So what happens then?
They end up overproducing these things called androgen precursors, which get turned into, you guessed it, more androgens.
So it's like the body's trying to compensate, but it just makes things worse.
Exactly. It's a bit of a hormonal mix-up.
Wow. That's complicated. So what does this mean for people with AGS?
Well, it depends on how severe it is and when it's diagnosed. In some cases, baby girls might be born with ambiguous genitalia.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to deal with.
It definitely is, but luckily there are medical teams who specialize in helping families navigate this.
That's good to know. So what if it's not caught right away? What happens then?
Well, if AGS goes unnoticed, those extra androgens can cause all sorts of problems, especially for women.
Like what?
Things like excess hair growth, irregular periods, acne, even a deeper voice.
Wow, so it can really impact the body in a lot of ways.
It definitely can, but the good news is that with treatment, many of these symptoms can be managed.
Oh, phew. So there's hope.
Absolutely. Hormone replacement therapy is usually the go-to.
Makes sense. Got to bring those hormones back into balance.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered a ton of ground here. It's clear that the adrenal glands are super important.
Absolutely essential.
So what happens when they're not working properly? Dr. Eldeeb mentions Addison's disease and Cushing's syndrome. Those sound pretty serious.
They are, but thankfully they're not super common. Let's start with Addison's disease, which is basically when your adrenal glands aren't making enough cortisol and aldosterone. It's like they're running on fumes.
Yikes. That can't be good. What causes that to happen?
Most of the time, it's an autoimmune thing.
Meaning?
Your own immune system attacks the adrenal glands by mistake.
Oh, wow. That's rough. So it's like friendly fire, but inside your body?
Exactly. It damages the glands so they can't make enough hormones.
That's wild. Anything else besides autoimmune stuff that can cause it?
There are a few other things, but they're less common.
Like what?
Infections like tuberculosis can do it, or certain cancers, even some medications can mess with the adrenal glands.
So it's not always an autoimmune attack, but that seems like the main culprit.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so what about symptoms? How do you know if your adrenal glands are in trouble?
That's the tricky part. The symptoms can be sneaky, and they often come on slowly.
Uh-oh, that sounds like a recipe for misdiagnosis.
It can be, but one major red flag is serious fatigue, like way beyond just feeling tired.
Okay, so not just need a nap fatigue, but something's wrong fatigue.
Exactly. It's debilitating, and rest doesn't help much.
Wow, that sounds awful. Anything else to watch out for?
Well, since aldosterone controls salt and fluids, people with Addison's often have low blood pressure, dizziness, and might even crave salt like crazy.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Sometimes their skin gets darker, especially in areas that get sun exposure.
Huh, that's interesting. So the symptoms can be all over the place.
Yeah, it affects a lot of different systems, which is why it's so important to pay attention to your body.
For sure. So if you notice anything weird, go see your doctor. Right?
Absolutely. Early diagnosis is key for managing Addison's.
What does treatment look like? Can they fix the adrenal glands?
Sadly, there's no cure, but it can be managed really well with hormone replacement therapy.
So basically, replacing what the body's not making.
Exactly. It helps restore that balance and ease the symptoms.
And people can live normal lives with this treatment.
Absolutely. They do need medication for life and regular checkups, but they can definitely live full and active lives.
That's great to hear. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about Cushing's syndrome, which is kind of the opposite of Addison's, right?
Right. It's all about having 2 MUCH cortisol instead of not enough.
So it's like the adrenal glands are working overtime,
Yeah, and there are a few reasons why this might happen.
Like what?
Sometimes it's a tumor on the adrenal gland itself, churning out too much cortisol.
Oh, wow, that's scary.
It can be, but it could also be a tumor in the pituitary gland, which sends signals to the adrenal glands.
Ah, so it's like the control center sending the wrong message.
Exactly. And either way, you end up with a cortisol overload.
And that's not good, I'm guessing.
Not really. High cortisol can cause all sorts of problems.
Like what? What are we talking about here?
Well, one of the most obvious is weight gain, especially around the belly and face.
Ah, so that moon face I've heard about.
That's one of the signs, yep. You might also see muscle weakness, thin skin, and easy bruising.
So it affects how you look and how you feel.
Exactly. And it can also lead to high blood pressure, high blood sugar, even mood swings and depression.
Wow, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
And it weakens the immune system too, right?
It does, unfortunately. Makes you more prone to infections.
So it's not messing around. What can be done about it?
Treatment really depends on the root cause.
Makes sense. So if it's a tumor, what then?
Surgery or radiation might be necessary.
Okay, that's serious stuff. What if it's not a tumor?
Sometimes medications can help by blocking cortisol production or how it works in the body.
Oh, interesting. So there are different options depending on the situation.
Absolutely. It's all about finding the right approach for each individual.
Wow, we've learned so much today. It's incredible how these tiny adrenal glands have such a huge impact on our health.
They really are amazing. It all comes down to balance, like we've been saying.
For sure. When our adrenal glands are happy, we're happy.
Exactly.
So any final words of wisdom for our listeners on how to keep those adrenal glands in tip-top shape?
I think the biggest takeaway is to manage stress. It's easier said than done, but finding healthy coping mechanisms is crucial.
Couldn't agree more. Whether it's exercise, meditation, spending time outdoors, or just taking a break when you need it, it all makes a difference.
Absolutely. And remember, pay attention to your body. If something feels off, don't ignore it.
Great advice. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the adrenal glands. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about hormones.
To all our amazing listeners, thanks for tuning in. We hope you learned something new and are feeling empowered to take care of those incredible adrenal glands. Until next time, stay curious and stay healthy.